on what is an historic day for U.S. diplomacy. President Biden is in Geneva, Switzerland today to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin at what both leaders agree is a low point in relations between the two countries. Mr. Biden has promised a tough stand with Mr. Putin, whose plane landed in Geneva a short time ago. CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell is leading our coverage in Switzerland. Norah, good morning.
Hey, good morning to you, Anthony. Here in Geneva, President Biden is facing what could be his toughest foreign policy challenge yet, a face-to-face summit with a man that he has called a killer. But just this week, he also called President Putin bright and a worthy adversary. Now, all of this is happening against this beautiful backdrop, an 18th century villa right here on Lake Geneva. It's actually just across from where we are right now. It's actually the third time this Swiss city has hosted U.S. and Russian leaders for talks. Now, today's meeting actually comes 20 years to the day that President George W. Bush met with the Russian leader, famously suggesting he had looked Putin in the eye and got a sense of his soul and found him trustworthy. Well, I think it is fair to say that the national security team around President Biden doesn't think there's much to trust with Putin at all, given that Russia has interfered in the last two presidential elections and those recent crippling cyber attacks that originated from inside Putin's country. You can see now that President Putin is arriving right now at that villa. His motorcade had just passed by here. There is extremely tight security here, meeting the Swiss president there, who we will hear from shortly. You hear the press, of course, shouting questions to them. It's unlikely that we will, no handshake there. Interesting. I don't know if that is COVID concerns, but we will see. There it is. We will see Russian President Putin along with the Swiss president and President Biden later this morning, before they have some 4 to 5 hours of talks. Now, we should also note, Anthony, the larger geopolitical picture here, because just this week, Russia began these naval drills in the Pacific near the coast of Hawaii. Now, it is considered the latest in what the U.S. believes are a series of provocations against the United States, and that's what's going to come up at these meetings. Ed O'Keefe is traveling with President Biden and is at the summit site this morning. And Ed, we should talk about this. I know there aren't any big agreements expected today, but do White House officials see this summit as a way of sending a very tough message to the Russians?
Well, good morning. Good day, Nora. Good day to you from just around the bend here in Lake Geneva at this heavily fortified villa where the president of Russia has now arrived. You're correct. White House officials not setting high expectations nor expecting any major takeaways. But White House officials do tell CBS News the president will clearly state America's national interests and make clear that any Russian actions counter to them will be met with a strong response. Now in Geneva, President Biden is set to come face-to-face with Russian President Putin. When asked if he's ready,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ahead of the meetings, Russia is sending a provocative message. The country's Navy conducting what it calls its largest military exercise since the end of the Cold War, positioning ships and long-range bombers about 300 to 500 miles west of Hawaii. Relations between the U.S. and Russia are at a low point, with Russia-based hackers targeting two major American businesses in just the last few months.
We will respond if Russia continues its harmful activities.
Final preparations underway at Villa Lagrange. Right here, President Biden, President Putin, and the Swiss president will greet journalists here to cover one of the most hotly anticipated diplomatic meetings in years. The meeting is expected to last at least 4 to 5 hours. Presidents Putin and Biden will both be greeted by the Swiss president, who will make remarks and then leave. The two leaders then set to be joined by their foreign ministers and interpreters. They'll meet for a while, and then the summit will open up to more aides. Both men are expected to hold separate news conferences. Among the topics expected to be discussed today, nuclear arms control, Russian interference in U.S. elections, and cyber attacks. And the White House says the president's expected to raise the fate of two former U.S. Marines being held in Russian prisons, Paul Whelan and Trevor Reed. CBS News was first to obtain new audio of Reed pleading for his freedom.
I would say that I spent my whole life in the service of my country, and I would appreciate it if my country would help to bring me home in this difficult situation back to my family.
Reed's family said they hope the summit will bring him one step closer to home. What would be success coming out of this summit?
For me, it would just be that they are making a plan to free him soon. It's not going to happen overnight. He's not going to fly home with the president, but at least that there is some good talks, that they agree that he will be coming home soon.
Reed was arrested in 2019 and charged with assaulting police officers. He has 7 years left in his sentence. President Putin has suggested a U.S.-Russia prisoner swap, but U.S. officials say that's off the table. And in remarks this morning to the Russian press, Putin's spokesman says, among other topics, they want to talk about nuclear arms control and regaining access to embassies and diplomatic compounds in their respective countries. Nora, they are among several subjects that will be discussed today.
No doubt, Ed, at that very long series of meetings expected today. If you think about the number of summits held between U.S. and Russian leaders over the past many decades, even here in Geneva, it has largely been about the threat of nuclear weapons, Ed. But in this summit, there's a different type of threat that has risen to the top of the agenda, and that is cyber warfare, right? What are you hearing from White House officials about what exactly Biden will say to Putin about those cyber attacks that have been launched against the United States?
Well, a few things, Nora. I mean, among other things, now remember, just coming out of the NATO meetings, there's been agreement among members of that military alliance that they will consider cyber attacks on countries as a potential violation of the Article 5. An attack on one is an attack against all. So that could potentially amplify the severity of cyber attacks. The other issue to watch for today is conversation about cyber prisoners or cybercrime prisoners and whether or not there should be a swap there. That was part of the confusion that was generated over prisoner swaps earlier this week. Putin suggesting in an interview that perhaps if there were cyber criminals in the United States, they could be sent back to Russia. The United States says, don't worry, we take care of our cyber criminals. He should do the same.
All right, Ed, thank you. Let's send it back to all of you in New York. Anthony?
Nora, thank you.